Small and I have come to Pune to functions, weddings.
भाई रेडी कंपनी सारे आगे
अभी कहाँ हैं सारे? वो तो पीछे आए हैं अभी।
नहीं ऊपर वाले कर पा रहे
आइए
मार्टिन
यस प्लीज
मार्टिन
सर थोड़े आ जाओ पीछे। मैं बोल रहा हूँ बोले से
Right in the center, middle of it all, Mark.
Oh goodness me, I don't like being the centre of attraction.
Bhatt is right in the front. आपको चार्ज देना पड़ेगा।
Why is everybody doing it?
Can't cut it.
So we'll all hold it together. माफ कर दो।
निकाल देंगे तो
जी बिल्कुल निकाल देंगे।
That's why you got to hold that hand. Short के लिए मास्क निकालेंगे। Okay.
रेडी
Wait. Sir, come forward. Yeah. Okay.
थैंक यू मैडम।
One group photo, please.
Mahesh ji, what a pleasure. Hi, Pooja ji, what a pleasure. Thank you, sir.
सर महेश सर एक ग्रुप फोटो
I could hear that. I could figure that. Thank you. Doctor, आप आओ ना। नहीं, आप आओ। नहीं, आप आगे जाइए, please.
पीछे तो
Thank you. Come, please.
दुष्यंत चलो।
ये हट सामने
डॉक्टर संजय जी।
हेलो सर।
मैडम
भाई देखे चलो।
आ जाइए अब मेरा फोन आपके पास है, आ जाइए। So when do you all start? I mean, when do you all welcome your first?
13th
Oh wow! So you start with your first batch then. Wonderful.
Wait.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining us on stage. Our next guest this afternoon is a lady who courageously wears many hats. An award-winning actor, director, voice-over artist and producer. Besides artistic expression, she's a warm and compassionate human being, extending her support to various other causes. I'd request Miss Pooja Bhatt to please join us on the dais. I would now like to invite on stage Mr. Narendra Kumar Baldota, Chairman and Managing Director, Baldota Group of Companies. Mr. Baldota is a distinguished entrepreneur whose pioneering efforts in establishing progressive and sustainable development practices in business and in nation building have drawn recognition to the Indian mining sector. He has served as Chairman of Jain International Trade Organization, Mumbai. He is also the Chairman of the Greater Bombay Cooperative Bank Limited. which has 22 branches in Mumbai. Under Narendra Kumar Baldota's leadership, the Baldota group of companies has reached greater heights. Thank you for joining us on stage, sir. I'd now like to invite on stage Dr. Rahul Bajpai, COO of Samparpan. Holding a management degree from University of California, Berkeley, Haas School of Business, Dr. Rahul is an experienced healthcare professional with focus on hospital planning and commissioning, along with strategy and business building capabilities. He has over 2 decades of experience in the healthcare industry, handling various leadership roles in India and overseas. Samparpan benefits greatly from his vision, acumen and man management skills to carve a significant niche for itself in the world of de-addiction treatment and recovery. Thank you for joining us on stage, Dr. Bhatt. I would now request Dr. Azhar Hakim, Director, Outpatient Services, to please join us on the dais. Dr. Azhar Hakim is a physician, psychotherapist, and a transformational coach who integrates knowledge technologies from medicine, neuroscience, psychology, philosophy, and spirituality to enable individuals and families to create transformative change. With 20 years of professional expertise, Dr. Hakim brings to Samparpan his rich and diverse experience spanning leadership positions in the US and India. Committed to changing lives, Samparpan has been his long cherished goal. Thank you for joining us on the dais, Dr. Hakim. I'd now like to invite on stage. Thank you, Mr. Martin. I would now like to request Dr. Rahul Bajpai to please kickstart the launch with his opening remarks.
Thank you so much, Gayatri. It's a great pleasure to be here today, to be welcoming you all and celebrating the grand opening of Samparpan, a residential de-addiction center for drugs and alcohol. I take this opportunity to welcome the one and only Mr. Mahesh Bhatt, the lovely Ms. Pooja Bhatt, the magnanimous Sri Narendra Baldota ji, dignitaries on the dais, the highly regarded Baldota family and friends, Samparpan advisory board members, and the respected doctor community. I also welcome members from the AA-NA community, our media friends, esteemed partners, my corporate colleagues, and each member of this august gathering today. This may be the formal opening ceremony, but the doors of Samparpan have been opened wide and welcoming for a full year now as a counseling center in Mumbai. During this time, our center has become a valued addition to the society and mental health care system in India. Today is the culminating event of a series of major actions that have been ongoing as a part of the vision and mission of our group. But this is not the end here. Rather, we at Samparpan take it our responsibility going forward towards the society. This initiative is aimed at addressing the huge untapped potential in addiction rehabilitation services and making it a world-class facility. We understand that each client rehabilitation journey is unique to their condition, and every client at Samparpan will receive comprehensive care and support specific to the needs so that they can make a smooth transition from rehabilitation to the everyday life they love. We soon going to be a part of the premier global community through upcoming and proposed accreditation programs, and we look forward to serving those in need of medical rehabilitation. Sometimes challenges and struggles are exactly what we need in our lives. May you welcome every effort, every struggle and every challenge. May you open your wings and fly. May Samparpan bring you back to life and beyond. Thank you so much.
So first and foremost, let me just thank you guys for coming out here on a Sunday. I know that would be a painstaking audience for me to do on any Sunday. So for all of you guys who made it here to support us on this day, thank you. A little bit about me. As Gayatri said earlier, I'm a physician, I'm a therapist, I've worn many hats in my life. And for the last 20 odd years or so, I've been working in the field of substance abuse and addiction. I went to med school in Bombay, I went to Nair Hospital, finished up with that, went abroad and got my master's in therapy, and people asked me, what do you specialize in? And happened to specialize in something they call treatment of co-occurring disorders, which is when people have both an addiction and a mental health issue. And that sort of becomes a theme in my life, and I seem to live by this motto about how do you make life more complicated than it needs to be, as you will see in the next 5 minutes. So I decided to work with this population, and then for the next, I think 7, 8, 10 years I was living in the US working in residential treatment, involved in outpatient treatment, residential treatment, advocacy, fundraising, all that wonderful stuff. And very abruptly, I decided to come back to India in 2010 to make my life more complicated than it needs to be. And then when I came back, I was gone for a decade, right? The decade in which there was massive transformation in India. The 2000s I was gone. And I came back here and I set up private practice. And the changes were astonishing in many levels. But if you just speak about the explosion of substance use, I started seeing stuff that I'd never seen before in the 90s. You saw kids who were younger and younger using substances and getting addicted. You saw women getting more and more issues. We saw older adults. You saw a wide variety of substances I'd never heard of on the streets of Bombay and all over town. And it was very difficult. See, there's always going to be an X amount of people who on outpatient basis will become good. But equally, for people in which the disease of substance abuse has progressed long enough, without a residential treatment stay, it becomes impossible. So I found myself working in private practice, getting increasingly frustrated that you do X amount of progress and you're just not getting to the point that you need to get to sustain people in recovery. And so this idea, and then over those years, the treatment industry in India was getting up to par. We weren't there yet. I was ending up sending a lot of people abroad. And this combination of stuff was really getting to me, And along with the 5 or 6 years ago, I met the Baldota family. And I think there was a resonance right there, because here was a bunch of people, very successful conglomerate, who had a very big passion for CSR, right? And they seemed to share this idea that the thinking that evolved is, why should anybody from India have to go abroad for treatment? As far as medical care goes, in the last 20 years, we've come to the point that people all over the world come here. Right? Why are we thinking small? Why are we not doing something on a scale? And that's how the idea was born. And then life got busy, and they got busy, and I got busy, and then in the middle of the pandemic, again to make life more difficult than it needs to be, at the start of the pandemic, we decided this is a good time to start a rehab, right? And so we started talks in 2020, and then we started our outpatient center last year, and it's been extremely rewarding. So what is it that we do? So the big misconception that a lot of people don't understand is that addiction is not bad behavior. Addiction is not a moral failure. Addiction is a biological disease. Right? And unless we start acknowledging that and treating it as a medical condition, we are going to make peripheral changes around the edges. Once you understand that, what you realize, a lot of people who got addiction for over 8 or 10 years are not getting high anymore because they enjoy it. They're getting high because they don't want to feel terrible when they stop. Right? And so quite often if a person has got a long-standing addiction for 10 years, 12 years, there's no way he's going to be able to sit at home and say, "Aaj se sab band." I wish it does happen that way, and I have to pack my bags and move to Hawaii and live somewhere if that happened that way. But it does not happen that way. There is going to be a bunch of people, no matter what you try to do on an outpatient basis, are going to require residential treatment when they're away from the triggers, when they're away from the stresses in which they can heal and recover. So we started conceptualizing a program, which has 3 components. A pre-treatment phase, which is going to be in Mumbai, the rehabilitation phase, which I'm so happy to see so many people here today, and then the aftercare phase. And the whole pre-treatment phase is based on the idea, again, it's very rare that somebody with an alcohol problem, with a drug problem is going to knock on your clinic and say, I want to stop. Right? 90% of the times there's a family member or a loved one who will come to you. And then we use evidence-based treatments called motivational enhancement therapy, in which you help the family how to engage the person and how to bring the person on board on the treatment. A certain percentage of those will actually get well outpatient, but definitely you will need a certain component of them will be rehab, and that program, when Martin comes up to speak, he will walk you through what we plan to do over here. The last component, which again will happen in ridiculous, right? So there is going to be this whole program, both in pre-treatment, rehabilitation and outpatient, that has individual counseling, group counseling as well as family therapy, supported by psychiatric care. I specialize in co-occurring disorders. 50% of people, approximately, depending on what study you look at, will have a coexisting anxiety, depression, bipolar condition. Right? And unless that is addressed, the chances of staying sober long term plummet. Right? So over the last couple of years, we spent a lot of time, I think, finding the right people. And I'm really, really grateful that I think in Dr. Ashish and Shweta and the entire team that we built here, Martin has come down from the UK and Thailand. I think we got the right combination of the Baldota family backing us with the vision, a treatment team.
Well, the dawn of new hope in addiction treatment, Samparpan. There is a line of great French existentialist writer, which my friend Dushant reminded me yesterday, that it was in the harshest winter that I discovered that there was an invincible summer within me. It was in despair, in the dark night of despair, that the first ray of light descended on me. Call it grace, call it miracle. Having hit the rock bottom, having been very successful, having had back-to-back hits, and being talked about as the new Zafar Terrible of the film industry, who's going to steer the film industry into sparkling new spaces, I discovered that nothing fails like success. Having touched the peak of the first mountain of your personal goal, I discovered that there was gnawing emptiness. As John Steinbeck said, that there was, you're well fed but you're still hungry. You're warm but you still shiver. You're loved but you still look for love with a begging bowl outside. Something was missing, and that made me hit the bottom. Now I had, from the struggling young boy who had barely means to keep the wolf away from the door with a little girl like Pooja, my first wife, I had become a very successful man, and I had the means to destroy myself. I had the means, and I had the applause in the auditorium. Even when I got drunk and I behaved obnoxiously, people put up with me because I was a money-generating machine. So nothing failed as success. But then one day, when my daughter, second daughter, Shaheen was born, I came home drunk, having celebrated. And when I carried my child in my arm, I just felt that she turned her face away from me out of revulsion because my mouth stank. That's what I believed. And that was a moment of grace. After that, this 34 years, I've not touched a drop of alcohol. And then I set off on a journey. Cold turkey, I did not go to AA. I didn't go to a doctor. I felt that the powers that birthed me must have gifted me with everything that I had is there within me. I don't need to reach out. But that doesn't mean that somebody else should not. I do not want to put myself as a model and say that emulate me. But I walked this path alone. And then I birthed a film called Daddy, in which my darling Pooja made her foray at the age of 17. And then we began shooting for Daddy, and I had given up drinking, and I proclaimed to the world that I had given up drinking. And while we were shooting for Daddy, one night after my actors had gone, I used to give them drinks and not drink myself, because the sight of people drinking was still very comforting. And Pooja, the 17-year-old girl, having memorized her lines and rehearsed with her father for the next day, went to sleep. My wife was away, and I'd announced to the world that I'd given up drinking. And while I was putting the bottles away, I said to myself, nobody will know if I take a drink or two. I'm stressed out. Why not have a drink or two? The moment I said that, a voice within me erupted and said, you can lie to the world, you can lie to your little girl who's there, but how will you lie to yourself? And that was the day I was scorched from inside. And then I discovered what the great sage of India, Buddha, said, be a light unto yourself, Swayam Pramana, Swayam Prakasha. It's only when it burns inside of you, you can bring the best of bottles of alcohol. I wouldn't touch it. But still today I have nightmares that I've hit the bottle again and I've turned everything that I've done to ashes. But the irony that I think Pooja will talk about is that the child who frees the fictitious daddy in the movie Daddy of his alcohol addiction, years later herself became an alcoholic. That's another story. So that's the fictitious life which we weave on the screen and give you a happy ending. But then there is real life. And real life is hard, bitter, unforgiving. And at every curve of your life, you must remind yourself that if an alcoholic like me, I'm 34 years sober, if I touch a glass of beer now, I will be back where I started from. I'm delighted to see a quantum leap like this being taken here. It's a quantum leap. And I'm back. Martin came with Rahul to my house. I discovered that things are changing. Something has been fast-tracked in the last 2 years but there is a pandemic of despair. And I wonder, Martin, how are we going to deal with this growing despair that is there in people? There's a war out there in Ukraine. The world leaders have come down on their knees. Everything is in shambles. Our belief systems are scrambled. Our stories are not working. The WhatsApp inspiring messages wither away like the morning dew drop. How the hell are you going to save that individual who's biologically predisposed towards substance abuse? As doctor said, that he is not a depraved human being. He's not an inferior human being. He's one of us. He can't deal with the despair. And so he takes to substance abuse, his self-medication. And will you have the compassion to look at him with that eye? Will you educate the world around him yourself? Look at him with a different eye. That these are the questions that will gnaw all of us. But here in the outskirts of Pune, when you start a thing like this, it's an oasis in a desert. And I only wish you the best, and I hope that you grow and you grow. But the truth is that truth does not require PR machinery. It's like fire. It spreads on its own. Why did Rahul seek me and Pooja out? Not because we are celebrities who tantalize you with our movies for some time. It's because we have suffered and climbed this mountain of sobriety, aware that any time we could fall down and be back to ground zero. So it's what we have lived. So great things things come out of human suffering. Great things. The entire culture is born out of the womb of suffering. It is suffering that gives birth to great movements. As they say that when a grain of sand gets into an oyster, the oyster, in order to escape from that pain, turns it into a pearl. Its intention is not to make the pearl, but to escape from the pain. So I see Samarpan comes out of your pain. It comes out of your pain. It's a beautiful pearl. It's for the world to marvel at, but it was born in suffering. It was born in the dark night of despair. So the answers will come from despair, not from bogus hopes, not from sound bites which are whipped up by politicians on the hour by the hour. They insulate you from the reality. By confronting the hard reality, you may perhaps have a chance to usher in a new dawn. I congratulate you all for doing this. May you have more power to create more such oases all around the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your honest insights, Mr. Bhatt. We all stand encouraged by your experience. It's time for us to go back to the source, and thereby I would like to request Mr. Narendra Kumar Baldota to discuss with us the evolution of the Abhiraj Baldota Foundation.
Good morning. Shri Mahesh Bhatt, Srimati Pooja Bhatt, dignitaries on the dais, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to warmly welcome you to the inauguration of Samparpan, the De-Addiction Center for Drugs and Alcohol. Firstly, I would like to start off by commending Shreni Periji and the entire team of Samparpan for making this happen. This would not have been happened but for their vision, passion and determination. Their drive reminds me of my father, late Sri Abhiraj Baldota, who instilled in us the culture of giving back to the society. He founded the Baldota Group of companies in 1961, with starting with a small mines. Following his steps, we have lived up this journey of growing from a small mining company to a diversified business group with interest across mining, pellet making, wind energy, industrial gases, shipping, aviation and environmental system. This would not have been possible if we had not stayed true to our value of integrity and goodwill. Even though practicing it has come at a cost, such as when we refused to engage in corrupt practices, our mines were shut down for years. We still